What's up, guys? This is Adi again, Gate 7 International. Another deep dive. I'm starting to lose count of them already in the winter, and apparently there's more that are coming too. So the club is keeping me busy, but we're here for it. We're here to give you guys the latest and greatest on this latest scouting report, which is going to be on Gaston Hernandez from San Lorenzo. Very excited to get into it. But before we do, don't forget to like and subscribe. Please help us continue to grow the red and white community. The engagement, the like, the follow, it costs you nothing, but it really helps us continue to grow the algorithm, find more and more people that are Olympiacos or even Greek football fans, and to come join this great community. You can also support us on Patreon for $1 a month. You can join the WhatsApp group and get access to a lot of things that we do not share publicly or on social media. And then for $5 a month, you can get access to expanded content that's at least 2 extra episodes a month, plus early access to the scouting reports like the ones that you have now. So, without further ado, we are going to talk about the man of the hour. We are going to talk about Gaston Hernandez, our new left footed center back, 26 years old. He is 6'1", 185 centimeters for the metric types. And he is sitting at 78 kilograms, which is about 171 pounds. So he's pretty thick. Well, I shouldn't say that. He's muscular. And he is the second of the three center back signings that we have done the scouting reports for. Yet another purchase out of the Argentinian market. Now, this one, of course, is coming out of San Lorenzo. The previous one's coming out of Huracan and Velez. So Gaston Hernandez came up through the San Lorenzo Academy and went right into the first team from the academy. Never left the club either until, besides going on loan one season and then eventually coming to Olympiacos. The total purchase for this agreement was in the figure of 4 million euros for 80% of the player rights. These player rights issues are very prevalent in South America, and this was not an easy deal. The deal stalled multiple times, and there were some extremely absurd requests in the contract that we're not going to go into for the sake of the scouting report. But in the end, what's important is that the deal got done, and the player is now at Olympiacos. As a center back, Gaston Hernandez is an adequate ball carrier, not flashy by any means, but he has a great understanding of the ball at his feet and even his own capabilities. Not incredibly fast, but he's at least fast enough to take advantage of some careless lunges or overcommitments by attackers on the press. When he gets challenged, he has a tendency to kind of like flick the ball up over an opponent's leg that's trying to sweep, maybe lunge in to take the ball away from him, or just flip the ball over his whole body. um, he's got some strength to him, that's for sure. Agility is average, but his situational awareness when getting closed down is context for success. Not the tallest of center backs, but what he lacks in height, he does make up for in ability. And as far as setups go, he's played in both a 3-4-3, he has played in a 5-4-1, as well as a 3-5-2. So, but primarily he's played in a lot of these back three setups, which is very interesting context considering that we do not play with one right now. But with the personnel that we have enough center backs now where we could run that. But this is something that we're going to talk about kind of as we go on through the rest of the course of the deep dive. Now, as we get started, like we always do, we're going to talk about goal creation. Now, here, of course, you have your percentile chart, which we have been using for all of the scouting reports. And if this is your first time tuning into the scouting report, what you see here is a chart of different types of metrics of performance based data. And we compare that to everybody else that's playing in the position. In this case, every other center back that played in Argentina, and we evaluate them on a per 90-minute basis and see where he stacks up. And you can see here, at least going in the very bottom section, which is goal creation, he's well above average in terms of his goal creation compared to other center backs in Argentina. Now, the context for this goal output was always corner kicks. It was not always headers or shots with his foot directly off of the corner. Sometimes it involved a scrappy rebound or a ball that was, returned back into the penalty area after the initial corner. Either way, never scored when it wasn't off of a corner kick. He does get plenty of shot opportunities outside of corner kicks, like other types of set pieces, and even in open play. The interesting thing to me was how deep he would be in the final third in open play. I mean, multiple times I would see him near the 18, pushing himself forward near the 18-yard line or the outside of the penalty box, dribbling past one or two players, and sometimes even taking a shot. While that was really interesting to see, and I do love the added dimension that this could bring to a back line, I really don't see how this is going to be something that Carvajal will use. Even Panos Retzos is not afforded much grace to get forward under Carvajal. And this could have something to do with the fact that Carvajal clearly doesn't trust half the roster. We've talked about this time and time again. So he doesn't trust half the roster as it is. So maybe he would give Hernandez freedom going forward, but I doubt it. I mean, and this doesn't take away from the fact that he gets into a number of goal scoring opportunities, especially compared to other center backs. And even then, he's still underperforming relative to his XG. Assist creation is in a similar fashion to goal creation. Everything is always off of corner kicks. And there weren't many at that. I mean, creating goals for his teammates probably is not a value proposition for him. Outside of creating rebound situations for his teammates, there's a handful of backwards passes that led to some shots. But once again, the context, he got very far forward when involved with the offense. And I just have a very, very, very hard time believing that this is going to be something that's allowed by Carvajal. Again, maybe Carvajal will trust some of the new players more. Maybe we'll see him play things a little bit more loosely and more open, but so far that's not something that we've seen under Carvajal since he's been coach at Olympiacos. Up next, we're going to look at the build-up and possession characteristics. So that's going to be the top third of the chart, that top set of data points. And there is a very unique value in this player, in his build-up qualities. While he is competent distributing the ball, his volume is actually quite low. You can see that in the passes per 90 minutes. Now, his volume is low, but you can take notice that in his progressive pass volume, that's also well below average. Yet he has a lot of volume of passes into the final third as well as progressive carries. So while he's not a central distribution source in terms of volume like a Retsos is for us, he does start off a lot of possessions by winning the ball and bringing it forward himself, by dribbling it, by carrying it forward. If he's not winning the ball himself, he connects with the midfield to kind of carry that ball forward to the midfield and then distribute it himself. He can also play the ball directly into the penalty area, which he did at 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 a rate that was above average compared to other CBs in Argentina. He's very competent in one touch pass and move as well, but there's way more instances of him getting the fall forward as a center back. Now, while we do see Retzos and even Doy on occasion taking initiative in similar respects to bring the ball forward, they don't usually do it this aggressively or this often and go this far forward. So it's a very unique value proposition because here you have a guy, he's not actually he doesn't have a lot of progressive passes. So remember, a progressive pass is meaningful movement forward with the ball, but yet he has so much volume going into the final third, which tells us he's either playing these balls through in a higher up position or he's carrying them there and releasing the ball in that position himself. Both of those are very interesting because we don't always see that as the case, and we don't see that at the case with our current center backs because our current center backs are usually playing the ball a little bit deeper. So it's very interesting context as far as the progression game is concerned. Pass accuracy for his career is around 84% and was a little higher that you can see this season. And it's even at what it is this season, a little bit over 85%, that's well above average for center backs in the Argentina league. He's very accurate, technical, especially with one-touch pass combinations, as I mentioned previously, but he looks his best progressing the ball forward when he's getting in these advanced positions and he's helping move the ball around or getting the ball into corners. This is when he looks his best, and again, Just as I was concerned about how much of this offensive inclination we will see under Carvajal, I again struggle to see how Carvajal, who has been so conservative so far, will allow Gaston Hernandez to get this far forward to actually contribute where he really adds value. Gaston Hernandez is like a Panos Retzos if Panos Retzos carried the ball forward more than he already does, which is he does progress the ball forward by carrying it more than any other center back in the league. But the difference with Gaston Hernandez is he's not relied on to be the crux of possession. At least he was not at San Lorenzo. So very interesting value proposition in terms of build up and possession. Now, the last thing we're going to discuss here, of course, as a center back, this is something that's very important, is are the defensive attributes. Now, on the chart, you can see them in the very middle third there. And on the defensive side of things, Gaston is a bit of an animal. Almost no one gets by him if he's closing them down. They have the ball at their feet. He just relentlessly tracks them down, especially this season. And that's really the context for his defensive success. If his partner at San Lorenzo seemed to be much more of the player that was better at anticipating, watching where the possession was moving and positioning himself off of where Gaston Hernandez was going. So you can think of it like Gaston Hernandez is like an Andreas Doy, closer to his style of aggressiveness, chasing balls down. I didn't see a tremendous amount of evidence that showed me that Gaston Hernandez was really good with his positioning or adequate in anticipating opponents in open play. I mean, I didn't see him caught out very far. So I don't want you to think that he's like really bad like Ndoye is at least, but I didn't see anything. If he was really good with his positioning, I probably would see more interceptions. If he was very good with his positioning, I would have seen a lot more of like the second ball wins, or maybe after one of his teammates or gets beaten by a defender that he's there to scoop it up because that's where he's supposed to be. I didn't see a lot of those situations, but I'll give him this. Whereas Andreas Doy very often overcommits and then he gets beat bad. Gaston is much more measured in his challenges. He's not the fastest, but I very rarely saw him get beat like we've seen Doy get beat, and putting hands on people in that kind of situation. I very rarely saw that. Gaston in the air is also not effective at all. I mean, I saw a handful of clearances with his head and some, where the ball landed near his feet and he just cleared it out. He's more likely to get a rebound or get the ball to his feet and clear it out in that manner. But if we're looking at someone that's going to give us a bit of an edge in terms of the aerial part of the game, especially defensively, it is not Gaston. This is not the guy that's going to make us look better in the air, especially on set pieces. It's just not his thing. The very last thing we're going to do, as always, is we have our comparison. And once again, here, just like I did with Carmel, I am comparing him to Adres Doy. And I used Doy again because, again, the same thing I said during the Carmo deep dive is that Doy is the more expendable center back here. And as we look to see where the value differences are between Gaston Hernandez and Doy, we see that Gaston's ball carrying ability is not only a level above, he also takes things a little bit further than Doy does down the pitch. Better also in terms of his defensive duels, as he's not likely to get caught overcommitting. We brought that up earlier. Gaston also has a noticeable increase in goal contribution volume as well as his expected goal contribution volume. Again, you can see this all on the radar plot there. So he he has much more of this volume, more touches per 90 in the penalty area, where so you could see kind of like where some of the value proposition is. Not that we're going to expect center backs to get a lot of goals or have a lot of production or output in that area, but we'll get some out of him versus where we really don't get anything out of that with Ndoye. Now, where Andres Doy excels over Gaston Hernandez is in his aerial ability. And we see a lot more volume and possession from Andres Doy as well. I don't expect really the difference to have much impact long term as far as the possession goes, because we know Gaston when he's in Greece, is going to see a lot more of the ball, especially because Olympiacos is a lot more dominant in possession. He'll see a lot more of the ball. Doi also is more likely to take players on in terms of 1v1 dribbles, kind of like run at them a little bit here, especially if he's running up through the center of the park towards the midfield if he has the ball. Gaston kind of just prefers to dribble himself out of trouble. So we're not going to see a lot of that. Don't expect it. In the final third, maybe when he's in a very advanced position, he may dribble past the guy to rip a shot. But you're not going to see too much of Gaston Hernandez really dribbling past people, besides just giving himself space. Andreas Noy also has a tendency to distribute from much deeper positions, as we talked about a little bit earlier. And that's indicated here, especially by his volume of progressive passes. You don't really get a lot of progressive passes unless you're deeper into your territory. Now, in the case of Carmo, I saw Carmo as a clear upgrade to Doi. For Gaston Hernandez, I don't necessarily see an upgrade per se on an individual basis, but I do see someone that probably could partner better to Retsos. I can't see him pair directly with Retsos, super effectively because obviously if he I told you he doesn't have great area ability, neither really does Retsos. So putting the two together and we don't really have much aerial support on the defensive side. So it does though create a nice symbiotic relationship in which Retos can remain deeper while Gaston represents maybe a more competent and aggressive partner moving forward and in the offensive side of things. So maybe we see that mesh better than it does with Andreas Ndoye. So there's some context there maybe for something that's a little bit more interesting, at least as far as we're concerned with Retsos. Now, in the end, Gaston is going to be our third left-footed CB in the roster that we brought in this January. I don't mean third in the pecking order, so to speak. He's just, we brought in three center backs. He'll probably be second in the pecking order. He's going to be fighting with Carmo for playing time, and that partnership is going to be with Retzos. Retzos and Doy are right-footed. The center backs we all brought in are all left-footed center backs. So ideally, they're going to be the ones that are taking each other's playing time or providing depth for each other. So just a little bit of context with respect to that. Now, the last bit of the scouting report, the verdict. What is my verdict from the player? Now that we have all this information, what can we expect? What do I think of the signing that we just made? And taking into account everything that we've just seen, context surrounding the transfer, Gaston is going to be, like I said, he's now our third left-footed center back. Carmo is definitely coming in as the starter. He's a loanee from Porto. He's got a very high buyout. He's not getting loaned to Olympiacos to sit on the bench. So he is probably going to be the de facto starter. You can put money on that. That means that Gaston Hernandez will most likely not be the day in, day out starter here for the rest of the season. He'll probably get a lot of game time in, especially if we're resting Carmo, but he's going to be the shout going to next season. That being said, we do need competent center backs for the rest of the season, as well as more permanent solutions for the summer, because we have a lot of rebuilding to do in the summer as well. This is something we've talked about ad nauseum for the last month and a half. Contracts that are up, the core that needs to be built, so on and so forth. 4 million though, 4 million euros we paid for him for 80% is pretty steep, especially at this juncture. We paid that for Eze and Ortega in the summer. And while I think Eze was still pretty good value for the money, I'm happy with the contributions. Ortega has not been that this far. He really hasn't showed me that he's worth the 4 million that we paid for him. That's just how it is right now. Plenty of time for him to improve on that, but we haven't seen what I think we paid for yet. And I have concerns that the context for Gaston Hernandez's success may not be met here. What we've seen from Carlos Carvajal doesn't make me think he's going to do what's necessary to get the best out of Hernandez. Outside of his lack of aerial ability, I do like what he offers. I think he's a good player, although all things held equal. But there's something that can be said for how things could look with Carvajal's signings. Maybe because he doesn't trust the players that we currently have that are part of the roster now before the changes. Maybe that's why we play so pessimistic, as Kostas Levoyanis would say. Maybe when the new signings are here and they're playing, they change the context of this whole thing. It's hard to say. So to kind of make things simple, I'll frame the outlook like this. Short term, I don't see much value in the signing. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't really do much for us, maybe play a handful of games after the next month or the next 2 months maybe. And then until the end of the season, kind of some sparse usage. I do think long term he will be a solid fit for us. That being said, I give this signing still, it's like just barely a thumbs up, more like a 3/4 thumbs up. It's a it gets a thumbs up because I think that long term it's a good move. It's just right now in the short term, I don't think we're going to. I think Carmo is going to be the guy we stick with, and Gaston is the long term buy. So it solidifies us still short term with an extra body at the center back position, and it gives us that cover needed for Carmo. But then represents competition for Ndoye, he's been Andreas Doy, and he tries hard, but I'm still not convinced he's actually a center back. I would like to see him further up the pitch, even as a six, but that's a conversation for another time. Olympiacos doesn't really appear to have any intention of stopping the business that's happening anytime soon. And after signing three center backs, there looks like there's another winger on the way, Nemanja Radonjic. We'll have the scouting report ready for that as well. Reports of a six recently, another midfielder, and then even a left back. A left back. We just brought in Ortega. We have Omar Richards, who's healthy now. He's played a couple games. And then we still have Doran Leidner, who's about to be cleared to train with the first team. Craziness if that's true. So whether we like the signings or not, the roster is getting a facelift, and there could be a huge change to the 11 moving forward. I hope you guys enjoyed the deep dive. I hope you found the information valuable. More deep dives are clearly in our future with the winger I mentioned, the maybe another six, maybe more players. Um, Nelson Abbey's already been announced by the club. The scouting report will follow after I do this one. So a lot of stuff, a lot of content coming for you guys. A lot of things to explain to you and show you kind of what these players are all about. So looks like you're going to see a whole lot more of me. So hope you're not sick of me yet. My name's Adi. This is Gate 7 International by the fans for the fans. We'll see you for the next time and for the next deep dive.